Hey guys, it's Firjano and welcome on my channel. Uh, Today I have a guest on the line that has a very rare personality disorder called Histrionic Personality Disorder, and we're gonna discuss it. So here she is. Hey.
Hi. So I'm Saphx. I run my YouTube channel, which is Not So Innocent Eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm recently diagnosed with HPD, which, if you don't know, is Histrionic Personality Disorder. It comes with your grandiose narcissism, so it goes into NPD as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, if I was summing it up in a description for your audience, I would probably say the kind of life perspective is center stage in narcissistic wonderland.
Oh.
It's a disorder where you're getting a lot of feedback. It's very dramatic and artistic, and generally all around mental and eccentric.
Uh, you know, uh, I all cluster Bs are very dramatic, and many of them overlap. But I wish to know so much more about HPD because we don't really hear much about it. And thanks to your channel, I have more more real life information thanks to you. And I will of course put a link to your channel in the description later, so everybody can watch your videos too because they are pretty fucking good. So yeah,
Thank you.
about HPD. When were you diagnosed with it?
A few months ago,
Mm-hmm.
I think around October.
Mm-hmm. What was the diagnosis made of? Like that was a psychological evaluation, psychiatric, I don't know, medical history, like
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
it's made on your medical
Mm-hmm.
history, conversations that you've had with your GP, your mental health nurse, and then up at Woodland View, which is the kind of nearest psychiatric hospital, and then crisis response team,
Mm-hmm.
and then in Scotland they put you down for group therapy.
Mm-hmm.
They treat cluster Bs in general when actually it's quite interesting because HPD, grandiose narcissists, are the last people who should be in a group setting. We dominate attention, we like
Mm-hmm.
reactions, positive or negative, we're fucking mental, we can intimidate everyone, and
Oh
yeah,
my
so
god.
I'm waiting to find out how that goes. So I'm on the waiting list for that. I'm medicated just now because they don't trust me to be completely in control of my own mind, and it's probably sensible.
Oh, I can like relate to that because you know I have ASPD, and it's not that similar to HPD as, like, I don't know, let's say PPD or NPDR. But these disorders overlap so much that we do have some things in common. Like we can be pretty intense too, and pretty dramatic, and not always in full control. It will be interesting to talk about those differences. But for now, I wanted to ask about your best description of HPD you can get from your own experience.
Life is a movie, and you're the director and the lead actress.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is more intense, and for me, like, my feelings and emotions are physical sensations. So it's like being on drugs. So you're constantly chasing a high instead of a low.
Mm-hmm.
So when you do go low, you go completely ridiculously self-destructive with it.
Mm-hmm.
We just can't do self-pity. And obviously we don't have Jiminy Crickets.
Mm-hmm.
Also don't have guilt, shame, remorse. So we kind of embrace the mental. It wasn't a surprise to anyone in my life when I was diagnosed.
Mm-hmm.
You might be able to tell. We're very eccentric, very talkative. Everything's a high or everything's a low. There doesn't seem to be that kind of middle ground. We do better in chaos than in calm.
You know what? I have that too. But from what I hear, it's a lot of like BPD, like intense emotions, I think, from what I gather. Um, what
I think
about what?
it's actually interesting. One of my friends has BPD, and I would say they're so different.
Oh,
Right, you get a lot of the behaviours are the same, but I mean BPDs when they lash out and they're horrible to someone, they fucking hate themselves for it, and they
mm-hmm,
punish themselves, and they have insecurities.
mm-hmm.
We don't. You know, when we lash out at someone, we fully justify it. They deserve it. We have fun with
Oh,
it.
oh God, that's so like from what I gather here, like these disorders are so similar in so many ways, but they have core differences in few aspects. Like it looks like BPD, but it also it's more like NPD in the outcome. Like why? Like no guilt, no shame. You know what I mean. Uh, yeah, I was wondering about more comorbidities with ASPD, and as you said, no guilt, no shame. So I guess that's that. What about empathy? HPD and empathy.
Right. Well, the same with NPD and ASPD. We don't have it. We have it only in ways that relate to us.
Mm-hmm,
We can empathise with things that we've gone through. We want, people we love to be happy,
mm-hmm,
but it's ultimately self-serving.
oh,
We can't handle self-pity at all. If somebody gets upset around me, I'll try and cheer them up. If
mm-hmm,
that doesn't work, I'll be like, oh, I'm going to get a joint. Let's have a joint. I
mm-hmm.
can't deal with self-pity.
I see.
And something I don't even have for myself. I don't have kind of empathy or compassion for myself, but I don't have guilt or shame. So, you know, I don't have a negative opinion of myself or others because of that. And also because you don't have, a Jiminy Cricket, you don't have a conscience, you don't have morality, you know, you're actually less judgmental than normal people, and you're very kind of accepting. You have a more kind of neutral perspective.
Mm-hmm. That
Um,
moral fucking people, like you know what I mean? The empaths, they call
yeah, I
themselves.
know it's always really hard to try and not portray yourself as a monster.
Yeah, because
People
mm-hmm,
tend to get really fucking offended by points of view we have, whereas we're like completely neutral.
because
Um,
it's so like hypocritical when I go into I don't know anywhere on internet, Facebook, let's say, and I see the empathetic people coming up. They said that since I'm ASPD, that I don't have empathy, so how can I be even good, and that they have empathy.
yeah, I do. I think that's a really fascinating subject. It comes to this kind of irrational philosophy that a lot of normal people have, where
Hmm.
you've got these kind of ridiculous concepts of good and
Yeah,
evil.
yeah, and
And
mhm,
what defines evil, I mean, if you look in the legal system, pretty much any country in the world, if somebody with bipolar disorder or schizophrenia
mhm,
commits murder, assault, domestic violence,
mhm,
whatever, that will be heavily kind of reliant on the mental state at the time. They're more likely to end up in a psychiatric
mhm,
hospital than convicted. Whereas, you've got the kind of ridiculous terms of like psychopath and sociopath, and,
mm,
you know, these people are convicted harder on not having remorse, because that is what normal people put as like as the definition of what is evil and what is good, in a very hypocritical way. Because if you ask anybody on the planet, what makes you know a serial killer evil? Oh well, they don't have emotion, they enjoy it. Ask these neurotypical people what they'd like to do to, say, a pedophile, and they will come out with the exact same viewpoints, the exact same justifications.
and even more tortures.
even more torturous. Yes, and you're like, you're actually a hypocrite. I get on great with my mom. She's eccentric too.
Mhm.
You know, and she's very paranoid about like COVID. Very like everyone says, and she also works in the legal system, so she doesn't demonize people. If you tell her like a normal view on, you know, what people should do to pedophiles, she's like, no, you know, there is a mental disorder there. That's horrific. That doesn't make you a good person. She's very against the death sentence. My mum also thinks everyone who is an anti-vaxxer should not get treatment and should die, and good riddance.
Uh-huh.
And my mum, that's the same fucking perspective. It's just you morally justify it because you've got preset morality. That's the only difference there. I think people who call themselves empaths,
Mhm.
fucking unaware narcissists there are out there. It's actually funny if you read these. Like it's usually women. Might be sexist, but it usually is. They will
Even
post like, "Oh, my boyfriend cheated on me. I went through his messages. I tracked him," and you're like, "Those are fucking narcissistic traits." I'm like, "Yes, I've done that. I know it's because I'm a fucking narcissist. I acknowledge that. I'm so empathetic. How do I destroy a narcissist? Like, really?
you know,
Really?
being proud of being an empath and having empath powers and being all good because you feel empathy and you so want to help people and feel their sadness of the whole world and feel their sadness because of other people and that person lost her whatever, I know, husband, and you feel her sadness, you know. Jesus Christ, like, get a grip. And this is like,
Well, who does it actually benefit? You
mhm,
know, the reality is everybody only has limited empathy. I think the psychological theory is the monkey sphere. You can
mhm,
only perceive so many people in your life if you're neurotypical as real people. So, you know, one death can be a tragedy, 1,000 is a statistic. If, of course, people disassociate, of course, people. Who would want to take on the whole world's suffering? It's fucking emo.
but
That's what empaths are. They're
also,
emos who didn't quite grow up.
also if like I lost a fucking, like, if my somebody died in my family I care about and some fucking cunt came up to me, I feel your sadness, I will fucking punch her, you know. Like, fuck you, you don't. You don't. And stating that you're an empath is either the most narcissistic trait you can have, like being proud of it, and just like masturbating to it, or delusional, I think. But
Oh no, I think it's partly like a messiah or white savior complex. And you
uh,
do, there's so much no, virtue signaling. You know, like empaths will be like, I care about pronouns. And it's like, you fucking don't unless you're trans. Nobody else in the entire world does. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, most people, they will have empathy to a point. You know, the
mhm,
difference is
mhm,
we fucking admit it,
mhm, mhm, exactly.
but then we're demonized for it. Oh, well, how can't you cry because someone on the telly died? Well, because it's a fake character on the telly. That's why.
Sensitive, it's just being too sensitive in my opinion. Yeah, I even made a video about like SPD and empathy, and I talked about empathy a lot, like cognitive, affective, and I like describe it pretty well. So, you know, about HPD, histrionic, and do you have like this cognitive empathy? Because I think you do, because you said that you are able to like comfort a person, like, you know, pat on the back if you know what's going on, but you don't quite feel it, right? So that's the affective empathy.
You don't feel it. You don't feel their suffering. But if you
Mm-hmm,
care about them, you want them to have a
mm-hmm,
happier life. So you try to
mm-hmm,
basically
mm-hmm,
kind of make them have the same perspective
mm-hmm.
as you. Self, self pity doesn't serve you any purpose, it just makes you miserable. You're only going to live once.
Mm-hmm.
Why be miserable? Don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And see, I would actually say that is a positive perspective.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whereas people who call themselves empaths are like, you've got to feel your pain. You've
Yeah.
got to acknowledge pain. And you're like, why? Why when you can actually fight it? I think it comes down to we have a more predatory nature. Pathologically, we have a strong self-survival instinct.
Mm-hmm.
So I know if I start feeling sad, I want to instantly distract myself from it. I want to go and do something that will make me feel good, whether that is a good thing or a bad thing,
Mm-hmm.
you know, or a self-destructive thing. We are trying to feel the most intense emotions. We're trying to comfort ourselves with them.
Mm-hmm.
And we also do that for other people. You know, if I sit and I talk to someone and I let them wallow in self-pity as an empath would, is that actually helping them? Or is building their self-confidence, you know, saying, do you know what? Yeah, shout, scream, smash it, get your emotions out, don't judge yourself for what you need to do,
Mm-hmm.
and get through it. You know, tough love as opposed to pandering.
Mm-hmm.
It, how does that not actually benefit people more than empathy does?
Being overly sensitive to somebody's, I don't know, whatever, tears, whatever, sadness, etc., and thinking you know what this person is feeling, basically. But and compassion is something you can have without having affective empathy, because I think the main goal in the world is to decrease the suffering, and I mean globally, because we don't have much affective empathy, but we for sure know how suffering feels like. I can tell this person what she or he can do, because I know pretty goddamn much about suffering, and I'm not overcome by emotions, so I have more place for logic.
Although our empathy relates, I have a very, very different view to you there.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. Can I do a quote?
Yep.
Okay. My favourite quote. I've got it painted on the wall in
Mm-hmm.
my kitchen, which
Mm-hmm.
is also my meditation room.
Mm-hmm.
My fruit bowl is full of bath bombs from Lush currently.
Mm-hmm.
um. Right. Homer, the Iliad. So you know, a few thousand years ago.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favourite quotes of all time, which actually sums up my entire kind of life view. He says in the Iliad, any moment might be our last. Everything is more beautiful because we're doomed. You will never be lovelier than you are now. We will never be here again. And, you know, so for me, my view is life is fleeting, it's short, there's nothing after. So the ultimate goal in life is to have the happiest life that you can, to affect change in whatever way you can. You know, in terms of my surviving son Ezra,
Mm-hmm.
you know, do I want him to be a brilliant academic scientist, or you know, have an amazing rich life? What I really want from him is just to have a happy life, to not have those regrets
Mm-hmm.
on his death. You know, would I rather he died happy or he died successful? Happy every single time.
That's very good. And that's the thing. The goal in life is mostly just to be happy, whatever this happiness is for a person, I think. And yeah, there is nothing after death, so like it's best to get as much good things from life when you can. Very good. And you can share the photo with me of this quote in the kitchen, okay?
Yes, you can mock my handwriting,
Ah,
especially the paint.
pa. Don't worry, I. Okay. That was interesting. This talk about empathy and all of this, it's so much needed because I see so much bullshit, especially recently on Facebook and YouTube.
See, this is the thing.
Mm-hmm.
You grow up and you understand that your lack of empathy is seen as monstrous.
Yes.
But generally, it's rationalized and it is in somebody's best interest.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody will be complaining, oh, it's really hard taking care of my terminally ill husband and he's lashing out. And, you can't say it because it's awful according to society. But in your mind, you go, well, the sooner he dies, the better, because he's going to be out of suffering. Your suffering in looking after him is going to end. You will then be able to actually grieve, because being in an elevated period of grief,
Mm-hmm.
which obviously as a bereaved cancer mum I have been, that is way worse than actual grief, and that's way harder on both parties. Yes, it is much easier to die than it is to watch someone you love die, but suffering is generally a bad thing, whereas empathy seems to be this whole kind of group wank to feeling sad. Nobody wants to feel sad. You don't want anybody you care about to feel sad. So actually there is an argument that our view is more positive and empathetic. But we also like wind up merchants, so that might just be our narcissism talking.
When I listen to folks with cluster B, I can hear like all of the disorders talking sometimes, I can hear a lot from me in you, like what you said about suffering, and even that sometimes death is better than fucking suffering when there is nothing more to look up for. I think so too. That's why I'm happy my father died when he did.
Yes.
Because his suffering ended, and I'm happy for him, because life with suffering is the fucking worst thing ever.
Yeah, no, actually, years ago when my son was dying
Mm-hmm.
of terminal brain cancer, I was running my Dear Terminal Cancer Mums blog.
Mm-hmm.
I did a post about the reckoning, and it's when no more can be done. Do you do palliative treatments to prolong life? And, my whole summation in that post was no. Actually, the most loving thing you can do is want that person to be out of their suffering, let their suffering end, and then it's your suffering. And I'm like, I can deal with my suffering. I won't deal with my son's.
Mm-hmm.
The first conversation that I had with Dermot, his cancer doctor, his oncologist, was about euthanasia.
Mm-hmm.
And it was from the beginning. I had fully expected to have to euthanize my son, and it was something I was completely comfortable with. I would a million times rather do that for someone that I love than let them suffer. In the last few weeks of his life, though, it spread and it went to his cerebellum. So it was actually that tumor that killed him, and that's a lot quicker than DIPG. But if it had been a normal DIPG progression, he would have lost all of his abilities and been uncomfortable and able to communicate. It would have been horrible. There is no way I would have let him suffer that way. So I am the biggest, supporter of euthanasia. And I don't see that as evil. I see that as far more loving, than these people who cried at me before you. Oh, he was a selfish prick. He wanted to die and he died. No, he was suffering. He wanted to end his suffering. He's got every fucking right to do that. And actually, the more loving thing to do is let go of someone, because you're just keeping them around for your own fucking benefit, because you don't want to deal with the pain of a world without them. Yeah. And, that is an opinion formed not through empathy, but through love. And I think love without empathy can actually be stronger. We can make the tough choices and put other people first
Yes.
because we don't have that self-pity for ourselves. You know, if my mum got COVID and was put on a ventilator and they're like, right, she's brain damaged, I would be like, right, turn off the fucking machine. And I know she would do the same thing for me because that is actually, I wouldn't want her suffering. She wouldn't want me suffering. We do it. Whereas my sister is very neurotypical and whiny. I think she would be like, no, I've got to keep her here. I don't want to lose her. I don't. And you're like, she'd have a shit quality of life. You'd just feel better because she's there. And that is way worse than any view without morality formed is.
I don't care much for reality and social norms, having what I have, but I do have a set of fucking like logical best outcomes I can pick from in life, as just you fucking described, you know, and I can sign myself with both hands up what you said, you know. Fuck, that was great stuff.
Thank you.
Sure.
Well, I'm a grandiose narcissist, so I think I'm brilliant anyway.
We all do. We all do.
The same way, like all of my friends are eccentric and mental in their own ways, and it is. It's because it's refreshing to actually just be able to be mental, but they're actually far more accepting. Okay, well, I'm in a coastal seaside town in Scotland, so it's not going to be international news, but one of the nearby islands, you know, there was a 15-year-old boy killed a 6-year-old girl, and his mother abandoned him. You know, now, every neurotypical I've spoken to, this 15-year-old boy, he's a fucking monster, he deserves death, he deserves torture, his mum was right for leaving him. And I'm like, yes, what he did was horrible. He deserves to suffer for it. It was quite a horrendous murder. His name is Erin Campbell. The little girl, I can't remember her name. No, Alicia McFall. And I'm going, this is a 15-year-old child. Yes, what he did was evil. Yes, if his mother wanted, if the girl's mother wanted to torture him to death, she would be absolutely justified. You know, he deserves punishment, but he's still a fucking human being and a child, and to my mind, his mother is far more evil than he is. Because as a mother myself, there is nothing that my children could do that would make me abandon them. And, you know, I think there is an argument, isn't that the greater empathy if we don't, you know, dehumanize people? Because what you find about empaths is they're like, well, I'm the best human ever, you know. Oh my god, look at me, I'm such a good person. I'm feeding the homeless in a full face of makeup and a boob job, posing for the camera. Like the fucking homeless person wants to be blasted on Facebook. They're just going, yeah, thanks for the sandwich, love.
How can I be bad if I have empathy? They are the most narcissistic, grandiose people I've ever seen on internet.
They are. They definitely do. They have this very grandiose but weird perspective where I'm a good person. I'm a really good person. Whereas as the actual diagnosed narcissist, I'm a fucking neutral person. I enjoy being good. I enjoy being bad. You know, whatever happens, I'm probably going to spin it in my own head to a positive way. If I like someone, I'll improve their life. If I don't like someone, I'm going to have fun and I'm going to out-bitch them.
I wanted to ask HPD and the cause of HPD. Because we had empathy covered, I think, very, very well now. But what about the cause of histrionic personality disorder? Because NPD, ASPD, BPD are mostly trauma-based. So I think it's also the case with ASPD. Can you answer this?
Yes, I think. I fucking hate to use a buzzword,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm going to have to use a
Mm-hmm.
buzzword to describe this.
Mm-hmm.
Right, HPD and NPD are not separable. If you have HPD, you are a grandiose narcissist.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so your dual diagnosis will be HPD, NPD.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is the buzzword is psychopath.
Uh-huh.
I fucking hate that word. It's not a diagnosis,
No, it's
but
not.
yes, you've
Mm-hmm.
got the with NPD, HPD, you've got the born or made.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say in my case, I'm born.
Ah, you are born.
I was born this
Mm-hmm.
way. As long as I can remember, I've been this way. And if you look back at my family genetics,
Mm-hmm.
it just seems to be a genetic factor.
Yeah.
In terms of my childhood, it's fucking idyllic. But I've always just thought differently to normal people. I've always known I'm a bit mental, and everyone around me has known I'm mental.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, because grandiose narcissist in the best and most charming way. Yeah, so I would say the roots of HPD would either be trauma based, which does not apply to me, despite the fact that
Mm-hmm.
in later life I've gone through a lot of trauma, or it's trauma related.
Mm-hmm. I see.
So
Mm-hmm.
yes, I mean fundamentally I lack the ability to pity myself. Yeah, yeah. Fundamentally, I lack the ability to feel sorry about myself, have regrets. I don't have these views of good and evil. I don't have standard views of morality. I've got a view of perception because I suppose on a fundamental level, I need other people. So, because you've got your narcissistic supply, which is again why you can't separate HPD from
Mm-hmm.
NPD, and why there is a whole debate about whether or not you can actually separate HPD from NPD.
Mm-hmm.
But I see the debate on that is it's whether you should actually have two sub-diagnoses within NPD of grandiose and vulnerable. Because I can relate, to grandiose narcissism, I cannot relate to vulnerable narcissism because that relies on feelings and a conscience, which I don't have.
Mm-hmm.
So certainly, in terms of trauma, I would say I'm incapable of being traumatized, which
Uh-huh.
sounds like a very odd thing to say. But certainly, if I look back at traumatic events, I didn't have neurotypical reactions, and I don't regard them the same way neurotypicals do. Certainly, I would say, like, rape, for example. Yes, I have been raped. Have I been traumatized by it? No. Did I hate the guy who did it? Yeah. But equally, because I've got this worldview, where I'm taking center stage in narcissistic wonderland and it's dramatic, I was able to get stronger from it. And, I would argue that's actually a more positive viewpoint to have because you get stronger instead of weaker. But it also it defines your difference. I suppose it's what makes you certifiably insane. I, I can't feel traumatized. I feel lots of strong emotions, but then my mind will put its own spin on it, and I'll get stronger from it. We always feel fucking fabulous about ourselves.
Hmm.
You know, yes, we know it is mentally fucked up, but we enjoy being that way because our life has more of a positive quality to it. Whereas with vulnerable narcissists, am I allowed to mention other YouTubers?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, I found this other guy. He's also British. He does his own vlogs. He does early morning barking. I'm not sure what his name is, but he described the dark thoughts with he has a diagnosis of BPD and NPD, but he's a vulnerable narcissist. And he
Mm-hmm.
was describing the dark thoughts, and he's like, I hate myself for having these thoughts.
Oh.
Oh, if I didn't feel guilt or remorse about this, I'd be a horrible, evil person, a psychopath. And I'm like, oh my god, fucking grow up. Fucking grow up. Everybody has dark thoughts. They don't make you evil. There's not this concept. And I think I put a very diplomatically phrased response to that video. And I was like, actually, you know what? Self-acceptance is way better. Talking about them is going to be way better for you. And actually, people won't judge you as hard as you think they would for
Gee.
having them. Whereas with
Mm-hmm.
with HPD, I would say we thrive off of it.
Mm-hmm.
We get stronger because of it, and we like that. Every single time I have a breakup, I feel fucking empowered as fuck. Certainly, my mother, she's actually amazing. I get on with her. She's fucking crazy. Could you tell I come from a mental family?
Mm-hmm.
But she will sit there and say, your lifestyle is, the epitome of utter boredom. I'm like, yeah, it is. And what? She's like, I don't care. Let's have another wine. Whereas, you say this to neurotypical people, and they'll turn around and be like, but you're not an evil person. So I fucking know I'm not an evil person. You really. Oh, my ex-boyfriend, well, my ex-fiance, he had bipolar, and I was in love for the first time. Actually in love with who he was when he was manic, because bipolar mania mimics grandiose narcissism. So I'm like, oh, this is a pretty guy who's got the same kind of view as me. This is like me as a boy. Because yes, with grandiose narcissism, ourselves are the best fucking example in humanity. Yes, so I obviously I broke up with my bipolar fiance,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd been in love with him during mania, because bipolar mania mimics grandiose narcissism, and as a grandiose narcissist, you're effectively seeking yourself, because yourself is the best thing in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And as I would argue, as mental health states go, feeling fantabulous about yourself is probably better than feeling shit about yourself. But, he would say to me, like, oh, you must feel these things. I'd be like, no, I don't. He would turn around to me and be like, well, how would you feel if I was flirting with other women? I was like, fucking turned on.
Oh.
From experience. I don't believe in ownership of people. I don't believe in monogamy. The only reason I'm being monogamous with you is because you've made it clear, I can't have you if I'm not monogamous.
Mm-hmm.
I spent the whole relationship saying I wanted to open up our relationship. Oh my god, no, he signed us up for a swingers thing, invited a man over for a threesome. Out the back door, he's like, I'm not attracted. I'm like, he's a nice guy though. It would feel shitty if we didn't try something. We should just try something and have fun with it. And afterwards, he's like, oh yes, actually, I've had a bit of fun with this. It was uncomfortable, but it's turned me on. He developed a whole fetish about it. And then after our breakup with bipolar, the whole narrative on his side has become, she manipulated me into a threesome.
Oh,
she wasn't picking up on my insecurities. I'm like, oh my god. Seriously? According to him, I also raped him. Despite the fact that sitting down with him, I was like, okay, well, how do you feel about that? Well, I enjoyed it. But But you'd led me to believe we were getting back together and we weren't. And then the next day you'd asked me about, seeing other men.
Um,
And I'm like, when I said we can't be in a relationship with each other. We should see other people. We both need to deal with our mental health. I'm okay being fuck buddies. His narrative was, okay, well then, the sex that I had with you, as a man who's the directing force, you manipulated me into it by taking your clothes off and coming through naked.
mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, sweetie, you didn't need to have sex with someone just because they got naked. I couldn't resist. You raped me. I'm like, oh my god. Okay. Okay, yes. Yes.
Fucking hell.
Normal people who act way more fucking mental and then self-victimize after doing it. Whereas I think with cluster B, certainly with, not with BPD, but the other cluster Bs, we're going to be like, yeah, we were a shit person, but they deserved it, and it's kind of funny. Let's move on with our lives.
I can see these relationships are pretty intense with HPD, and me being ASPD, I had, oh god, my relationships were either like shallow. I don't even know why I was getting into a relationship, or very, very intense when I actually have a bond with somebody.
I don't know. I mean, I sleep around like fuck. I've got a very impressive bed notch post, which you might or might not know from, pathological nymphomania, basically, being part of the diagnosis for HPD, which is another reason they're arguing HPD should be taken out as a separate diagnosis, because it's usually given to women. Whereas if you look at NPD men, or, lots of men in general, they use their sexuality to get things and they enjoy sex. Because who doesn't enjoy sex? Whereas HPD is like, oh my goodness, it's women who basically fit the criteria of Samantha in Sex and the City, and there's this whole moral boundary on it.
The thing with me is that he is the only person I actually want to be around, and I am detaching myself from other people, like from everyone else. And the more years pass by, the more detached from people I become. So actually, he's the only person I want to have anything in common with, what want to spend time with.
That's interesting. Do you think that is an ASPD thing?
It might be. I just grew so fucking tired of people.
For me, I would say in relationships, it's very much the opposite. I've had 3 long-term serious relationships. None of them made it past 14 months. Because I'm disordered and mental. But I feel absolutely suffocated in relationships after a while. Remember, the longest has been 14 months. And I can't imagine my life only just having one other romantic person. I want to have, the most dramatic and beautiful and eccentric life experiences ever. And the idea of monogamy is just so kind of, And when I think of it, can one single person be responsible for all of my emotional, sexual needs, romantic needs? No. Do I want to have a million different love stories and passion? Or, do I want to grow old with somebody and lose the sex and get wrinkly and have fat grandchildren? No. Neurotypical spends so much time lying to seem empathetic. I care about water aid in Africa. You've never been to Africa. If it got nuked off the map tomorrow, it wouldn't be anybody there that you cared about. And let's be honest, if we look at the terrorist attack in Paris a few years ago, like, oh, that was horrible, that was horrific. Oh my god, look at the footage. It's terrible. like 2 or 3 days earlier, there was a similar attack in Beirut. The only difference was
Mm-hmm.
that the kids with the blown out brains that they plastered the photos of all over the internet were white instead of black. It's like, neurotypical people detach themselves very easily. I don't believe anybody watching the news every day is really that depressed about the world. They'd all just kill themselves. There's nothing noble about trying to take on the world's suffering, and everybody detaches in their own ways. But they use cluster B to be like, oh, well, these people are evil, we're better. And you're like, you're not. You've got the same things. You've just got guilt and trauma complex and self-pity. And you want to be seen as the best person you can be seen as, which is narcissistic. Misguided and narcissistic. Because actually, the world is going to view somebody who can say, yeah, I'm a fucking asshole, but I own it, better than somebody who's like, oh, I'm sorry, I cheated on my girlfriend, it's terrible. The way footballers do. The whole world is going to respect people more who just own it than apologise for it. And, the whole virtue signalling and whole kind of commentary we've got in the modern world where, oh my god, if you say the word midget, you're a terrible person. And you're like, oh my god, I'm not.
Yep, pretty
Oh
much.
my god, you said fag. I'm like, yeah, actually, I'm bisexual. Nobody gives a shit. Oh my god, RuPaul said the word tranny. Yeah, and his defense was, I've been a tranny since the 70s. I own it. Nobody cares.
Based.
And actually, one of the interesting things you said is HPD is less known. Whereas I would say it's less diagnosed, not
Un-
less well known, because there's plenty of
underdiagnosed.
famous
Mm-hmm.
people. Right, Russell Brand
Mm-hmm.
clearly has HPD. Jeffree Star clearly has HPD. It basically you could just say we've got lovable asshole syndrome. Our personalities, fucking compensate for the bad shit we do. We don't feel bad about the bad shit we do, so we're like, yeah, I said this word, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is, we get away with it, so we tend to be more successful and functional in society. Ergo, it's underdiagnosed. The only time that we get diagnosed is when we're in alone. We can't understand it. I got my diagnosis because I had a mental breakdown. Well, I suppose a narcissistic wound, because I'd fallen in love for the first time with my bipolar fiance's manic presentation of self, because I fully believed that was the real him. I wanted
Mm-hmm.
that to be him all the time because he was so similar to me. Have HPD, and they own it.
Yeah.
And certainly with Jeffree Star, he's clearly got HPD, but he's so phenomenally, like, his personality is just brilliant. He can say the most ridiculous evil shit. We'll still love him because of it, because he's a fantastic, fun, charismatic person to be around. The same way that Ted Bundy, who would also be classified as the grandiose narcissist, and if you look at the sexual
Mm-hmm.
motivations for his crimes, also HPD, people like our personalities, ergo we tend to be more successful because we're the kind of asshole you love to hate. Recently, I can't remember which group it was in. I've joined a few kind of like cluster B groups
Mm-hmm.
and dark triad groups on Facebook. Someone had posted, and they'd said, what's your view on the science of eugenics? Because
Mm-hmm.
I find actually people with, detached,
Mm-hmm.
without morality, are better able to assess these judgments. And they're obviously looking for the viewpoint that, yeah, manufacturing better humans is better. Whereas I'm like, no, I'm completely against eugenics. I think the best thing that could happen for this planet is the mass extinction of the human race. We have fucked it up. And I don't have this, oh my god, all humans must be saved. In terms of the pandemic, people will go, oh my god, it's terrible. Hundreds and thousands of people are dying every day. And you're like, actually, back the fuck up for a fucking second. 25,000 people a day worldwide die of starvation. 16,000 of those are kids. Over 250 children die just of DIPG, which is what my son died of, every single day. Thousands of kids die of cancer, thousands of people die of starvation. There is way worse shit going on in the world than old and disabled people dying of coronavirus. Yes, it's horrible, but in terms of the planet, if a third of the world's population in humanity was wiped out, we'd still be hugely overpopulated. We'd still be causing pollution and all this shit.
Exactly.
You know,
One of the reasons why I don't want to breed, because it's fucking overpopulation right now, and for selfish reasons, your fucking grandchildren will fight over water.
mm.
That's my opinion on this. And what you said about wiping of human race, that's
So, are you as you're a
mm-hmm,
ASPD?
mm-hmm.
You think that ties into your decision not to breed?
You know,
Because I would
mm-hmm,
certainly say I think my need
mm-hmm,
to have
mm-hmm,
children
mm-hmm,
was probably deeply narcissistic.
mm-hmm. Yeah,
You know, I want to leave echoes in eternity after.
yeah, I can.
Ergo, you need to have kids.
I
Whereas with ASPD, most ASPD women I've known have been child free by choice.
Yep, I don't want to bring another human into this world, into this society, as you can say. And I also don't want it because I would probably neglect it, and it's my decision not to like do it. So I won't fuck somebody up like I was fucked up, basically. But yeah, also overpopulation. What you said, we need to rebuild human race from the start, and I don't know which time it will be this time, because I have my theory about previous civilization that were wiped out.
Oh, I
Mm-hmm,
definitely want to
mm-hmm.
be here for the apocalypse.
Oh, I
I'll
sure
actually
do.
go to bed for that. That would be amazing.
I can hear a lot from what you say in my beliefs too.
Yeah.
To be honest, and that's what I think is very much comorbid in Cluster B. So dramatic, They are right about us.
So speaking about being right about us, who is the Indian woman who does the YouTube video, Doctor Amani or something?
Yeah.
Right. She completely demonizes things. But I mean, she did a video because I know I'd searched like NPD and HPD on YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
and she did that. You can spot a narcissist by their eyebrows, and I was like, actually, you absolutely fucking can. You get a point for that. It's true though. My eyebrows do matter to me. My appearance matters to me, and that ties into the HPD grandiose narcissism. We are very concerned with our image and the way we're presenting ourselves to the world. We don't so much care whether it's good or bad. We want to be the fucking best at it. There's definitely a competition thing, but if you look at anybody who's successful in life, it's the same mindset. We just don't pretend we think we're a horrible person for people for having it.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing with ASPD, because I have narcissistic traits too, so I kinda get the idea of what NPDs like, how they are. But antisocial makes me not really give a shit about my presentation to the world. I really don't give a shit about what the world thinks about me. And when I
Yes,
wa-
actually,
yeah,
my ex from about 7 years ago was ASPD, and I our conditions, the grandiose narcissism and the ASPD, they just didn't match at all. He wouldn't have emotions. I'd have really intense emotions. And it ended up, very, very toxically, with a lot of really good sex, and he had an enormous penis.
Oh, God.
I do miss his penis, not any of the rest of him, and he's still miserable, and I feel really good about that, which is my NPD side. But I made I can't do air quotation marks when speaking, but the sociopath have a feeling, because you laughed, it was funny. And I think that's what we try to do with HPD and grandiose narcissism. We're always trying to bring people up so they bring us up as well. So we'll talk about shitty things we've done, but we'll talk about them with humour and finesse. Ergo, we don't usually have negative results for it. So we end up at a really low point. And we're going there because we're depressed and we can't stand dealing with depression. Like, oh, I'm crying every day. It's fucking annoying. I want to stop it. What's wrong with me? Whereas with, and again, with the diagnosis, I think vulnerable NPDs and a lot of people with ASPD who do have more of a conscience and things feel shitty about getting diagnosed. Whereas for me, when I got diagnosed, I'm like, oh, this is fucking fascinating. Oh my God, reality's dissolving around me and I'm going mental. And oh my God, this is such a cool thing in my life story. Because you do get hyper, and even drugs have a very different effect on us, which is part of the reason that I thought I had ADHD.
Yeah.
I don't know. I might not have ADHD. I might need an assessment for that. But like drugs, alcohol, things affect us in different ways, because all of my feelings are physical sensations. Ergo, they're like drugs. So, if I go out to a pub, I walk in, I immediately feel drunk before I've had a drink. I'm like, oh, I'm going to have fun with people, and I'll forget whatever problems are in my mind. I'll instantly go into if I'm having fun, I'll feel better. Or, if I'm really bad, I'll be like, oh, feeling self-destructive. Yep, go into a bar. Oh, I know who's got drugs. Drugs and sex, yes. And it works. Clearly it works. So our feelings being physical sensations and us chasing the drama and the need for intensity draws people to us. So even when we're being really shitty people, like the Jeffree Star example,
you are fun.
We're fun. And people like to watch us, like Russell Brand, like Jeffree Star. I'm choosing them because they're both super fucking famous. So that would be a fair thing to bring up. But yes, I mean, Jeffree Star, how many times have videos emerged of him saying right?
Yeah.
How much hate is there towards any white person who says the word? Now, to me, my morality says racist terms. Fag, dyke, whatever. Homophobic terms, tranny, obviously transphobic terms. None of them are better than the others. None of them are worse than the others. And, sexist terms, again, no fucking difference. There is not, as much as the world would like to portray it, an oppression Olympics. And actually, no term is more offensive than the others. They're just words. And, it's the power that the victims give to them.
Exactly. Words have power only if you give the power to it.
Yeah. So yes, we don't have the moral boundaries that we assign, that neurotypicals assign to it, and I think a lot of it is virtue signaling bullshit. And actually, if you look over our history, what you'll find is, like, certainly Eminem was he's homophobic, he's a horrible person. And it's like, well, yes, he is clearly a horrible person if you look at what he did with, his ex-wife. I think they were married, Kim. Like, doing a blow-up doll of your wife and writing a song about beating the shit out of her and murdering her and throwing it into a crowd and driving her to a suicide attempt. Oh, shitty. But the whole world loves Eminem. Why? Because his personality and his music is brilliant. We tend to get away with the worst traits of our personality. Jeffree Star is clearly HPD, but he's also clearly he's got an amazing personality. He's so fascinating. You can't not love him. I'm like, I don't care if he becomes the leader of the KKK. I'm going to buy his next eyeshadow palette and I'm going to enjoy him making jokes about it. Because he could sell me on anything just on the basis of his personality. I think it's funny the way neurotypicals pretend it doesn't happen to them. Right, okay. As much as I hate to admit it, I'm that middle-aged mum. I'm 31. I'm at that spiritual age, that timeline's running out, whatever. I absolutely fucking love the whole kind of philosophy and stuff. And the new age things, and I'm like, yeah, actually, do you know what? He's fascinating. And other women my age who are completely neurotypical, what they tend to love is fucking true crime. Everybody seems to love that, but they don't see that as this narcissistic trait. Like, can you name a single one of Gacy's victims? Can you name a single one of Dahmer's victims? Can you name a single one of Bundy's victims? No, but do you like them? Yeah, you do. Why? Because they're fucking interesting to you on a psychological level. And that's the same with us. Like, normal women in, our kind of age range, 30s to early 40s, are obsessed with true crime. They don't seem to see that is about the kind of morality and the questioning and the philosophical stuff, and also the ones that draw them to you, that you are drawn to, tend to be the ones who just fucking own it. I can't remember her name, but I do remember there was one school shooting in the States, obviously, because all of them happen in America, but they won't ban guns. She I can't remember her name again, but in court, her defense, why did you do it? I don't like Mondays. That's fucking iconic. I'm sorry, but you can't not love somebody who says that shit. The same way, Jeffree Star, he's got so much charisma and he's so funny that even if he ends up leading the KKK, I'm still going to buy his eyeshadow palette because, his shit's good. And I'm also going to watch him to find out what he says about it. And I find there's a real disconnect. Obviously, I'm in Scotland, in the UK. In the UK, we've got a really dark, horrible sense of humour. If you watch some of our famous comedians, we're like, yes, joke about pedophilia, joke about horrible things. It's funny. You've got America's response, which is, oh my god, it's horrific. You can't joke about that. And one of my favorite comedians is Ricky Gervais. And he actually, I think it was in Humanity, but that might be the wrong stand-up. He came on stage and he was like, people get offended if it matters to them. It's like, yes, I've said a lot of not things, but the only one that matters to you is the one that affects you. And I think that's true in real life with real people too. Whereas I think, neurotypicals are just so determined to deny that morality and that point of view, that perspective. They're like, no, I'm equally offended about the jokes about Hitler being a better, dinner party guest than a little girl with a nut allergy. You're just like, no, it's humor. You snowflake, get over yourself.
I don't even know what to say because you are doing this podcast here, you know. You are the host today. You are the fucking star today.
I know, but in my mind, I'm always the fucking star today. And if you talk to grandiose narcissists, they're just
Mm-hmm.
instantly going to draw attention, which is why I said to you earlier, oh, that's good. You direct the questions, and you're like, oh, you should take half an hour to an hour and a half. And I'm like, oh, good luck with that. Once you get us
Mm-hmm.
talking, we just can't fucking stop.
I can see that, but I don't mind. And you are giving us the best essence of your personality just by the way you speak. Then,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
absolutely fucking crazy, but adorable. And you like it. And if you don't like it, fuck you. Basically, is how our minds work at all times. We're getting narcissistic supply. Certainly during our conversation, I'm feeling really good about myself because I'm like, oh, I'm getting attention, I'm getting a reaction as well. But you seem to be letting your guard down a bit. Certainly, my ex from several years ago who had ASPD, I usually find them really incompatible conditions, personality and the under emotionality.
the most common emotion for me is anger. I can either like use it or I can submit to it. It's two choices for me, and sometimes it's not even a choice. So I don't quite feel the emotions the way you do. And if I had to go to a bar and be around people, I would rather shoot myself. Because but this podcast, what you are saying here, I don't need supply because I'm not LPD, but it kind of like makes my antisocial personality feel good also because of the things you are speaking of. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. I know, but it's such a total contrast.
Mm-hmm.
Is I care how I'm perceived. You don't care how you're perceived. I need narcissistic supply. You don't.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you just said, I'd hate to go to a bar and be around other people. Whereas I'm like, oh, that's a fantastic fucking setting. Everybody likes the mental health, drugs, and good sex.
You know
Like,
what I love? I love adrenaline, and what gives me adrenaline is like going alone to abandoned place at night and like walking there with I don't know, a crowbar, a knife, and looking for trouble. This is my kind of fun. More like, would you do something like that?
I will put myself in dangerous
Mm-hmm.
positions. I will destroy people. Um, Certainly, my a relationship from several years ago who was with the ASPD man,
Mm-hmm.
because I'll have to use the buzzword, the sociopath. We had this amazing relationship to begin with because of his intensity. I, you know, there was physical violence, but that was hot, and then there was great sex, and that was hot. But then it was the self pity and the insecurities that made me flip on him.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with HPD and NPD, when we flip, unlike with BPD, we're not going to go back to that person. Oh, but we're going to play really nice, and then we're going to psychologically destroy this person. I don't know if that's maybe more to do with the fact, I'm a tiny woman. I'm 8 stone 2. I'm 5'4" and 3/4, and 3/4 matters. you know. Um. So my go-to if I don't like someone is I'm going to make myself look like the victim. I'm going to play them. I'm going to do this. Whereas with ASPD,
Mm-hmm.
it's this emotional go to anger. I can absolutely go to anger, but if I really want to hurt someone, I just go to a really deep, calm place and I will play the long game. I will get, I'll have a huge argument with someone, and then, I will give myself a black eye.
Mm-hmm.
And I will go around and I will tell everybody, oh no, I opened the medicine cabinet and I got a bruised eye. And I know they won't believe it. There's a lot more manipulation and forethought with HPD than an NPD. And of course, with the elements of HPD, you're thinking, how is this actually going to be perceived? You're thinking about the long game. When you really want to destroy someone, you go really deep and you go in a way that it will get away with it. It's a lot more, again, to use a thingy word, a buzzword, it's a lot more kind of evil and calculated.
I can partially relate, because with ASPD there is also manipulation, but as I said, there are two types of anger for me. There is this cold anger that leaves more space for more calculating, and I would probably use different tactics, but yeah, I can plan and I can be patient, but it's mostly the other type of anger, which is impulsive, and I will just straight up react very impulsively.
Are you okay with being seen as the victim?
Uh, I don't really think of myself as a victim. If if it helped my case, I would be like, I can play a victim, but I don't really care. Like, I know that I'm not a victim, but if other people see me as victim, then it's like their thing, not mine. So I don't really care. If it helped my case, then yeah, I can be seen as victim, more or less.
Yeah, I think that is one of the viewpoints that fundamentally differ with kind of NPD, HPD, and ASPD
Mhm.
and bipolar. Is not bipolar, be
Borderline.
borderline.
Mm-hmm.
Borderline, that's the word.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, we do not see ourselves as victims ever. No matter what shit we go through, we want to be the survivor, but we're completely okay with being perceived as the victims to get away with it.
Yeah, I guess like whatever it takes, right? I don't really give a shit. I just think it's pathetic to like cry that you're a victim instead of like trying to grow stronger and stop being a victim, maybe. But yeah, if it's
I mean, definitely self pity is one of the emotions I can't relate to and I can't deal with.
Mhm.
Certainly, if you look at, because I usually avoid relationships because I'm better on my own. I mean, I can still have all the sex that I want, probably better sex than you get in a relationship. um, is, in relationships, people tend to get intimidated by you. They tend to have insecurities, and you're just like, no, I don't. And when it comes in terms of being seen as the victim, we see things in this way as like winning and losing. And in terms of winning the breakup game, is we look the best coming out of it. So if we want to destroy a partner, we do it on a psychological level and a public perception level, and we're okay with being seen as the victims. We never need to say we're the victims. And people will just praise us for them being so empowered and having fun afterwards. It's constantly positively reinforced. And even when we admit dark thoughts that we're having, we do it in a really charismatic way, and people kind of come to our side, which is why I think HPD is probably the least diagnosed of the cluster Bs. Is HPDs tend to be pretty successful in life. Generally, life is going to be a popularity contest. And, the more charismatic and balls to the walls you are,
Mhm.
the better results you're going to get. Which is another thing that I would like to address with the perception of HPD. No, we don't have big fake titties and blonde hair and really pumped up lips. Because nobody fucking respects people like that. Your HPDs are far more likely to be alternative or anorexic or anything that makes them more fucking interesting.
And stand out.
Yeah.
I get what you mean. What you said that life is a popularity contest, right?
Yes,
Mm. You are like really, really well as HPD and NPD, riding the system. I think you are owning it, and you are doing it with tons of like smart behind it, and logic, because you are not affected by the fucking hive mind morality, right?
no,
Uh,
no, yeah,
with me is that I only feel good around my boyfriend, because, as you said something before, because he's similar to me, and in this similarity I find a bond that is the only bond I ever had with anyone on this planet. And honestly, that's why I am with him, because we can go through life together. And for me, success is doing whatever I want to do in life. So going on urban exploration at night alone or with him, doing the videos, editing, and just by being myself and by being what I am and being honest about it, I tend to be pretty much successful as well. People like folks who are confident. What do you think? This,
definitely
yeah.
confidence is what makes us popular, which is what makes HPD the
Mm-hmm.
least diagnosed of the
Mm-hmm.
cluster Bs, whereas it's actually the most fucking obvious.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you look at a lot of celebrities or a lot of YouTubers, you can identify the mental health issues. The people with HPD, we fucking get away with it. You know, we can say the most outrageous shit, and then we'll justify it with our personality, and we've got a personality that draws people to us.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're very hard to forget. You know, we can make a rebound, we can kind of interpret how we're feeling and how other people are responding to us. And we will own it. We will keep going. Which is why, you know, somebody like, you know, oh, not Dahmer, not that Bundy. Somebody like Bundy. I know, I'm getting them confused in my mind because I've had a joint and it was a lovely joint. Sadly, it was only Stardog because my dealer's no longer getting mate rates,
Ah,
and
shucks.
I'm not paying 80 quid for her. I kind of wish I'd made that decision, but no, Stardog is still good. We don't feel shame, we don't feel regret, we don't feel remorse. So when we describe things that we've done and things that we've gone through, we can hold our hands up and say, yeah, I was the dickhead in this, but you know, I'll own that. And the world loves people who can just be unapologetically themselves. They also love people who are bitchy, because all neurotypicals and all mental people are fucking bitchy too. Everybody's got a dark side, and everybody will respect somebody who can own it. So for us, I care if I'm perceived as a good person or a bad person. No. Do I care if you remember me or not? Yes. And do I want to win the game? And social conventions, which we're very aware of, and perception tie into that. Certainly with my ex-fiance's sister, you know, the first night I met her, you know, she was going off in John's flat because it was a house party. You know, oh, you know, people who attempt suicide as parents are just so selfish. I'm like, okay, better hide my wrists then. And she talked to me, and then a few times later when we met up at hers in a kitchen for a few joints and some drinks and karaoke, she took an instant disliking to me because I was on my period, hormonal, and bitching about fat people. So I can feel better about myself. You know, because when you are skinny, you can do that, and people will instantly be like, oh, yes, but you're skinny. So you get that positive reinforcement.
Mm.
Yes, it's manipulative. No, I don't care. Yes, I do admit that, and people usually like me for admitting that, which is weird when normal people have empathy and just think I'm being horrible. Like, she's being horrible, but she's owning it and she's funny. And, you know, certainly you can get away with so much with just confidence.
And
So
humor.
anyway, I
Mm-hmm.
she got annoyed by me, and I instantly took a disliking to her. She decided I was flirting with her boyfriend. I flirt with everybody naturally. Oh, gorgeous. um, because it gets positive attention and it gets me higher. So yeah, I will justify me annoying her by flirting with a boyfriend and inadvertently making her have body insecurities because, you know, she had an obnoxious viewpoint and I was pissed and on my period.
Hmm.
So certainly it's a very interesting thing. The difference is we're okay with being shitty humans as long as we get the positive response publicly from doing that. So we'll do it in clever ways. Certainly, I don't give a shit about politics.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of, will I use politics to get a reaction out of someone, whether positive or negative? Absolutely. And because of the charismatic way that I will put it across, whatever my opinion is and whatever my intention is, I'll get away with it, which is why HPD is far less diagnosed than any of the other cluster Bs, because generally we tend to get away with it just because of our personalities. Because we're fucking crazy, but we own it.
The manipulation tactics you just said, I use them too. When I feel the need that I have to get a reaction from somebody to get something, in the long run or like instantly, I can do that too. But what you said about HPD being underdiagnosed, it's interesting. Why? Good point.
Well, no,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even if you look at celebrities, you look at reality shows. How many? How many celebrities clearly have HPD?
Oh well.
Right, pretty much every celebrity, every successful YouTuber, every successful vlogger, whatever, is narcissistic. You've got to be. And you define the ones that do it really well, it's HPD. It's the histrionic personality. It's the wanting drama, the wanting perception.
Mm-hmm.
And,
I can
you know,
see that.
certainly I would say it might be the least diagnosed personality disorder, but it's probably a fuck ton more common than you think.
Mm-hmm. I can see that.
Because every fuck boy you've ever hooked up with, every easy girl, every person who's not an immediate family member that really stands out in your life is probably HPD. Because we've got these really dynamic personalities, we love hearing ourselves think, talk, you know, we'll express everything. And we draw people to us with our openness and also our personalities because we're really, really high energy. So we'll match energies and we can get away with being bitchy, you know, because we'll do it in a funny, charismatic way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
You only have to go to YouTube to see that. Yeah, that's really good points, dude.
Yes, I did tell you
Mm-hmm.
beforehand that the problem with the podcast would be getting me to shut up.
Oh, don't worry about it. I'm enjoying this because you are making good points. I love acquiring perspective I don't yet have, and now I
Me
have.
too. I find that really, really fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
It is the psychological viewpoint. We're constantly fascinated by psychology because we're probably fascinated by how it relates to us with HPD and NPD and grandiose narcissism. Because we don't have this kind of moral view. We don't have these religious beliefs of it's all a test or this, that, or the other. You've got to be good or bad. And because we've got grandiose narcissism, where we are our favourite subjects, we analyse ourselves in this chaotic, neutral way. For me, everything is like a shade of kind of black and white. It's all shades of grey. Whereas for neurotypicals, there's clear, black, and white.
Mm-hmm.
Which for me seems less rational.
Hey, cheers.
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 I've really enjoyed talking to you.
And I did too. Interesting. Thanks for that.
Mental. Fucking mental. That's the translation of what she means if you're listening in the Eastern or Western boards. And you don't understand European, you don't understand Scottish very well. The viewpoint is fucking mental but pretty, so along with it.
Fucking mental but pretty. Pretty much description of this podcast. Basically cluster B. Right?
Yeah, I think it's gone really well actually.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks for joining in, for like sharing and shit, for being honest, because this is what I like.
Yeah.
When
did you enjoy it? Am I palatable to you? Or am I not palatable to you? How did it go? Because this is my first podcast, so I'm wanting constructive feedback.
You are one of the most eloquent people I had here, but I was actually expecting that. Thanks for joining in.
How do you feel about it?
Bye.
Okay, finishing. Bye.